Okay, great. Maybe we can move on to advice that students can get. What advice would you give to the students who are trying to study there?
Okay, yeah. So, see, I can start in order. What advice would you give in studying there? Honestly, for university, I don't know. Go to class.
Yeah, that's important, and a lot of distance learning students need to do that more, and I feel like they're lacking.
I know, right? I was like, I don't know, go to class. Studying here, I mean, like I said, because like in here, university is like probably the most free time that you will probably have, which is kind of different in these states because like university is probably your most like busy time. But in Japan it was like actually pretty lax, but go to class. I don't think it's very different from any other like university advice that you would give in the US. Now for language school, my advice would be like, make sure you probably, or I guess, just generally like make sure the school that you're going to is probably like, right for you. Especially for language school, like, I lucked out, me and my school work really well together. Some people, like some of the other students that I know don't really work very well with the school. So it's just sort of like, I guess, general studying. As far as studying is concerned, I don't know if there's really a whole lot of difference that you would have between here and there. Anything I wish I was aware of before studying in Japan? I think that would probably tie into the last thing. Like, I think mostly it's like stuff I wish I brought the first time that, not this time I remember to bring. So I can answer that question at the last one. One thing I wish more students who are learning would know more about. Don't like try to like be too intense or be too serious about like, I guess, trying to live like, a sort of like a certain sort of life that you're going to have here. Like, if you're coming here to study, of course, yes, study, but then also have a good time, like have fun. Don't get bogged down by, a whole lot of stuff that sort of just doesn't really matter in the grand scheme. There's a lot of people that you meet, like, they get like super stressed out from like, trying to live here. And it's like living here should not be stressful. Right. Like, I mean, it can be stressful, but like generally if you're just studying here, it should not. Be very open-minded. So there was one girl who came here that I knew of, and she got upset because she had, so like, of course, obviously, like, research the place that you're wanting to go to. And, and that includes, like, watching YouTube videos of watching people, okay, so here's something, watching YouTube videos of, people who live there and stuff like that. While that's a good resource, always also be mindful that this is part of some people's, like, job and, like, their brand. So they're not going to tell you bad things that are happening while they're living here because, like, their whole thing is, like, to give, like, a good impression. And, just, like, if something bad happens here, like, while you're here, like, you ran into, like, some life inconvenience, like, it is, like, that doesn't mean that the country is bad. It just means that, bad things happen everywhere. Right. So it's, like, always just, be mindful, whatever it is that you're doing, be careful, but, you can get through all, most things just in general. I was going to say, there was a girl I met here who, most of her knowledge about Japan came from, watching, YouTubers who lived here, and, it was, not everything that you hear about Japan on YouTube is true. So, she read that, or she had been told that, Japanese customer service is the best, which, I mean, it is, but if you worked a customer service job, you have to be really good. You have to, have a smile, and they just do that really intensely here. She got upset because she thought she was being singled out because the Japanese person did not hand her bag from 7-Eleven with two hands. And because she was like, they always hand you things with two hands, like, they always hand you your bag with two hands. And I was like, that's not true. I don't know why. And, she got into trouble online with, like, people who actually live here. They were like, where are you getting that information? So I think one thing is, like, if you're getting your information about Japan from, like, YouTube or something like that, please be very mindful that, they're not always telling the truth, and if something sounds ridiculous, it probably is.
That's what I really want to tell people too, because like, I don't know, students are telling me, oh, I'm watching this YouTuber talks about Japan, and I will go watch them. Great, students are trying to be mindful of what Japan is like, taking Japanese language class, like, like be aware of those cultural stuff, but at the same time, like some those videos, like, that's not true, you guys. I will pause it and then tell them, like, this is not true, so please be mindful. You gotta be careful what you choose to see. You might be seeing some stuff in what you want to believe in, and that might be not true in any cases, not just Japanese culture, but in general in our lives. Like, we tend to be want to look at something in our own lenses, and when we have to be really open-minded and have different perspective about a lot of things. So true.
Yeah, exactly. I wish, because I don't want, like, I was never big into YouTube. I mean, I guess I was whenever I was like a little kid in some part of high school, but by the end of high school I kind of stopped. And high schoolers, they're super into YouTube. I don't really watch YouTube except for watching cooking videos. Like, I don't know what a whole lot of Japanese YouTubers are doing, but occasionally, like, I'm scrolling through like Twitter or something, and I see a video, and I'm like, oh, no wonder people come here crazy, because you're out here telling them this is not.
Yeah, it's so hard to tell which one is true and which ones are not. Like, unless you actually know the culture, like, people would probably believe anything that it's on there. It's so hard to tell this is right, this is wrong, like if people don't know about it. So I want to be people to be really, really cautious when they make those videos, so that there's no misunderstanding.
Yeah, for sure. So it's really just like, while they're a good resource, sort of take them with a grain of salt. And I would say anyone that is wanting to, like, visit and live in Japan, like, how it is different for literally every single person. Depends on who you are, like, even things like, race, socioeconomic class, blah, blah, but, like, there's a lot of personality, there's a lot of factors that go into it.
Right.
So it's like, I always say, when I like Japan, I was like, I think anybody would like Japan, but, it just depends on who you are. So it's like, you really don't know until you come here.
Right.
So it's like, maybe keep, like, certain things, like, in your head when you're, like, when you come here to do things, but also just sort of try to absorb what's happening now or what's happening while you're here, as opposed to trying to relay it to something that you watched in a video, and then, you can make your own conclusions.
Right.
The main point is to have fun here. If you're not having fun, then it's like, figure out why it is you're not having fun, and then go from there. Is I guess the main thing. What items to bring from America? It's not. There's most things in Japan that are in America you can find here.
Right. Sorry for these questions. So funny. I love my kids.
No, I loved going, like, I was showing my friends these questions, and I was like, oh my god, they're so cute.
I know.
I think probably the main thing is that maybe, like, things like medicine. Japanese medicine does not work for me. Like, I guess pain medicine is what I should say. Like, things like ibuprofen, naproxen, stuff like that. I would probably bring a bunch of that with you before you come, because especially whenever I was having, like, my period or something, like, I tried to take medicine from from the store, like the pharmacy, and it did not work. I had to go get a prescription for stronger medicine. So the second time I brought a whole bunch of ibuprofen and naproxen and stuff with me for that, so I'm no longer in pain. And then also, like, if you're sick, you can bring things like Dayquil, NyQuil. Like, I would probably bring, like I think the main thing is, like, medicines. Make sure, like, bring, like, medicines and stuff with you. Because, it's may not, the stuff in Japan, they may not have it exactly like how we have it in the U.S., or it may not be to the same dosage. So, like, a lot of medicine doses here are very, very low. And sometimes, like, we're more accustomed to sort of high dosages of things. And I guess that would probably be, like, the main thing. If there's, like, certain spices and stuff, like, if you cook or something, bring those with you. Because I mean, I know a lot of people who are from like the Caribbean, and from like various African countries, and they're like, oh, we can never find any spices or certain things like from their own cultures that food that you miss, because just because you're here in Japan doesn't mean you have to eat Japanese food 24/7 all the time.
Right.
I will actually say that I do not like Japanese food that much, and that's okay. It is not even though I live here and I love living here, it is not my favorite food. Like things like spices, deodorant. It was a bit difficult whenever I first got here to find good deodorant, but I actually finally found good deodorant. You just may have to go through Amazon or something like that. But most other things you can find here, and it's not even necessarily that they don't have it. It just may be sort of different. So if you want, what it is like specifically that you're used to, then bring that in space. But things like towels.
I know, they're so cute.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
It's fine. And then we have Amazon here. If you can't find anything, Amazon will find it.
Right.
So
yeah. What about the food? Like, like Japanese food? They have a lot of foreign food merge. Like they do Japanese fusion of a lot of food. Like, do you like traditional Japanese food, or any fusion type of Japanese food too that you?
I have tried a lot of Japanese food, and I do like Japanese food, actually, like, just in general. So I think the thing for me is that generally Japanese food does not have a lot of seasoning or spice to it, and I love spice, and I love, stuff like that. And Japanese food just generally does not have that. So that's why it's not necessarily my favorite. But some people, they love it. And, it really just depends on your taste. So when I think of, and I've eaten a lot of food, but I don't remember the names of most of the food. It was just like, it was given to me, and they're like, here, try this. I'm like, okay.
I think that's mind opening too, like when people hear like Japanese food, oh, like I love Japanese food and sushi, but that's not the case, like there's so much more different food than just sushi in Japan. At the same time, Japanese food is great, but at the same time, like it's eye-opening that not everyone fall in love with Japanese food, and it's okay, that's totally fine. And I feel like everyone that says like who live in Japan or go visit Japan, like I love Japanese food, which is great. Like Japanese food is great, but it's not for everyone, and I think it's totally fine. Like I'm so glad that you said that, because I feel like a lot of people feel like they are a lot of great food in Japan. Don't get me wrong. Like I love Japanese food too, but like it is okay to say some people are not really into it, and you still live in Japan, which means that you love living in Japan, even though maybe Japanese food is not your favorite food, And like I wish more people will say that loud so that people can be. It's okay, you guys. Everyone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm a big proponent of telling people you do not need to like Japanese food.
And then you still live in Japan. Yeah.
Yeah, like just because you live in Japan doesn't mean you have to necessarily like the food. And even, because there is lots of things like, because when people think Japanese food, they think like sushi and ramen, but there's tons and tons of other food that they aren't aware of, that, they don't know what it is.
Right.
And, that is also very good. Right. It's just, I think like, because Japanese food, because, it's its own culture, like, food is culture. So, it's how they make their food is much different than how, my culture makes food.
Right.
And, because it's my culture, I like that food, that type of food just a little bit more. Doesn't necessarily mean that I think Japanese food is bad. It's just not my favorite.
Yeah.
Actually, since being here, I think I eat Korean food more than I eat Japanese food. Or just any other, like, Korean food and Singaporean food is like the food that I eat most here. Like if I'm going out, it's actually not Japanese. What's the Japanese food like? Like I love sushi and ramen, udon, like all the noodles. I love noodles.
とか、お好み焼きとかたこ焼きとか牛丼、あとは普通になんでしょうね。なんか convenience store food とか、there's so many, おにぎりとか、パスタとか、
Absolutely.
Sandwiches.
Always. I lived off of konbini food for months. Like the first months of the pandemic, I lived off of konbini. The 7-Eleven is right there.
Yeah, it's
And
so convenient.
the store has their own sort of like specialty of like, you know, warm food that, you know, they have in little containers, and the name escapes me. I don't know why I can't. But you know, and you have that, and like, you know, it's okay to not eat pasta majority of the time. And you know, even my dad, he was like, "You're in Japan, why are you eating pasta?" I'm like, "I like pasta."
Yeah, people in Japan eat pasta
like,
too.
If here doesn't necessarily mean I stop liking the other foods that I like eating.
Right.
And there's foods for literally, like, especially if you live in Tokyo or like the Tokyo area, you know, there is tons and tons of food from all sorts of different countries, especially like, you know, other Asian countries. That, you know, is absolutely like imperative that you utilize that, like, you know, resource to try those other foods that, you know, that you normally would not try probably back in the States. That you would not have access to. And like, you know, Tokyo, they have food for literally everything. Like, they have every sort of food that you can think of. Not even just like, you know, other Asian food. You know, they have American food. They have South American food. They have Caribbean food. They have African food, European food. Like, there is not at least one restaurant, like a couple of restaurants that cater to a certain specific, like, you know, they even have like, you know, Southern Black soul food. There's a whole soul food restaurant in Minato food. You know, when I'm just really missing food from home, I go there and I eat it. You know, because Tokyo has all sorts of different people. So, you know, of course, you have a diverse city like this, then, you know, everyone, you know, wants, you know, there's restaurants for stuff like that. So,
that's so cool. Now I want to visit Tokyo.